Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arctic series of the ICAS Export Voice Industry Program. My name is Nong Hong. I am Executive Director of the Institute for China American Studies. In this discussion today, we're going to turn our attention to Italy's role in the Arctic, a topic that highlights how the Observer State of Arctic Council contribute to the scientific research and environmental stewardship, and also multilateral cooperation in the High North. So today I'm joined by Mr. Marco Volpe. He's a PhD candidate at the University of Lapland of Finland, and also a visiting researcher within the Arctic International Relations team of the Arctic Center. We'll discuss how Italy is involved in the Arctic governance. So Marco, could you tell us, I know that Italy has been observer state of Arctic Council since 2013. Could you tell us how you interpret Italy's Arctic vision and also in the Arctic context?
Thank you, Dr. Owen, first of all, for having me. I'm very glad to be part of this discussion. And I'm very happy to speak about Italy because it's this year actually started a new time for Italian Arctic engagement. Since there is so much more attention from the government side, from also the research science, from the research side. As you know, and as you well said, actually 2013 was a turning point for Italy's Arctic engagement with the obtaining the status of the observer within the Arctic Council. And actually from that period, Italy started to be engaged more and more in the Arctic. And of course, the core of Italian Arctic engagement is science, because of course Italy is not an Arctic state, it's relatively far from the Arctic, but along the years has developed a very well structured research and science in the Arctic. So I would say that perhaps the most important, most relevant point for Italy being in the Arctic is science, with the research station called Dirigibile Italia established in 1997 in Ny-Ålesund, Svalbard. And of course, the facility has been integrated and developed along the years. But it's not, of course, the only point of the Arctic engagement of Italy. Italy frames its engagement within multilateral cooperation, and of course through the participation to the working groups of the Arctic Council, and is quite much aligned with the climate governance established by the EU. Even if we know that the EU has not the same status as Italy in the Arctic Council. I would like to stress here that perhaps there is some distinctive feature of Italian Arctic engagement, which is this pole-to-pole narrative, which is quite relevant and quite perhaps new, speaking about Arctic, non-Arctic states, and is established on research base, since actually many scientists says they are trying actually to prove how climate change that affect the Arctic will also have like effects on other ecosystems, and especially in the Mediterranean. So I think that this connection has been built basically starting from scientific level, but now the discussion is also shifting towards security and other engagement. So I think that Italy is paying much more attention in the Arctic for many reasons. Again, science is the core point. And in this, with this aim, I would like to mention that this year in October 29, there was the first Arctic Conference, national conference launched in Italy by the Italian Ministry of Defense, which actually gathered many armed forces from Italy and also research centers. So there was perhaps the first case on a national level where experts and practitioners in the Arctic gather in the same room to discuss Arctic issues and actually to understand better where we are at in relation to the Arctic issues and Arctic affairs. And that was quite interesting to see how many people actually work in the Arctic. And of course, with the Polar Dialogue happening in Rome next March, I think this also reflects how Italian engagement in the Arctic has been developing in the last years, being like more and more influent. So I think that they actually mirrors that Italy is playing more important role in the Arctic affairs.
Thank you. That's very comprehensive. And I think it has been 12 years since Italy became observer state. I know a lot of other countries like Japan, South Korea, that developing a new Arctic policy since then. So my understanding is that Italy is also developing a new Arctic strategy. You mentioned a little bit earlier. I'm just wondering, what do you anticipate will be the direction or element will be distinguished, will be different from the current strategy, and what element will be continuing?
That's very interesting questions, because this is a long process, as often happens, drafting Arctic policies. And I know that also this is the case also for Italy. There is so much discussion about the drafting of the new policy. And of course, I think that actually will resemble the Italian role in the Arctic in the last, that Italy has had in the last years. So it would be kind of a balance between continuity of some positions, some activities, and also some change, which are of course required, because I mean, we cannot hide from a new geopolitical situation in the Arctic, and something that I think Italy should also take into account. So I would see that also, you know, provisions like, and to foresee how it's gonna be, it's not very easy. But again, I think that the backbone of the Arctic policies will be still scientific research and science diplomacy. So how the scientific research actually Italy conducts in the Arctic can help in understanding and monitoring changing effects in the climate, and how this impacts to the local environment and local and indigenous people. But also, I think that, I mean, speaking about Arctic science, is not only about doing science, but is important to Italy, and perhaps that will be acknowledged also in the policy, that doing this research that is quite relevant actually gives Italy credibility and legitimacy within the Arctic Council. So that's why actually Italy has been also recognized, its status has been recognized by many other Arctic states and participants to the Arctic Council. Also, Italy is planning to invest more in the scientific research. This actually shows how important it is for Italy to conduct scientific research in the Arctic. In 2027 should be released a new research vessel called Nave Quirinale. At the moment, Italy conducts some hydrographic and hydroceanographic research in the Arctic with a ship called Alliance, which is owned by NATO, but is managed and run by Italian military navy. And actually this year, let me mention that the last summer I had the opportunity to join this research campaign. So actually, you know, I witnessed like in first person what kind of research they do on board, and what is the relevance of it. So having this new research vessel that would be ready perhaps in 2 years, perhaps hopefully would give Italy even more capability to navigate these waters and to conduct even more relevant scientific research. It's not only scientific research, I think, it's also necessary to understand how Italy will position itself within the broader geopolitical context, right? So I think that Italy, of course, will quite much align with the EU values of sustainable development, biodiversity protection, and all these values that are established at the EU level. But of course, there is the need to again, acknowledge the new geopolitical situation and the geopolitical context. So I think there will not be a complete shift towards, you know, militarization and security issues, but I think there will be a clearer awareness on what is the situation, and much clearer attention of what is the situation and how Italy can position itself within the situation, especially because Italy is used to have very close ties with Russia, especially at the energetic level in exchanging like energy imports and exports. So I think that Italy also needs to reposition itself in this context. And of course, I think again that perhaps this narrative of from pole to pole frameworks actually will be a distinctive point of the Italian Arctic policy. Again, because this is relevant at the scientific level. So providing the idea that how Arctic and the climate change and all the issues that are related to the Arctic as a global dimension. They are not only relevant on a regional dimension, so how they affect also the Mediterranean and other states. So to summarize, I think that actually the policy will be still like shaped mainly on scientific research. So will be kept this kind of scientific DNA, but with much more attention on the security issues. Again, not shifting towards a complete militarized approach, because I mean we have not the potential to do that, and also the interest, I think. But then, of course, there will be much more attention on the security dimension, alignment with the European values about sustainable development, and also with much more attention, perhaps, how Italian private companies and industries can contribute within this context. So some opportunities that are linked to development in terms of technological and exploitation also of natural resources. So these four main pillars, I think, that would be that the base for the drafting of the new policy, which should be coming out by the end of the year, hopefully, or in the first months of the 2026.
I wish I will have the same experience as you to witness and board a research vessel in the future. So you mentioned quite a bit on the role of Italian science in terms of being legitimate in Arctic governance. And also, I think you mentioned earlier there is, forgive me if I did not pronounce it correctly, Italy's Dirigibility Italian Station and Norway's Svalbard coast. So could you tell us the main research priorities and how this station has been involved? And in the same context, I know like China and also other countries, they also have research station in the Arctic. Are there any cooperation between Italian scientists and with, like, for instance, Chinese scientists in the context of a research station in the Arctic?
Well, thank you, because I think this is the very key point here. Again, because research has been like the key focus of Italian scientific engagement. And the Geopolitics Italia was established in 1997 by the National Council of Research, which now manage the station. In the first years, forgive me, I'm not scientist, so I try to navigate all this scientist stuff, and I hope that it will say like things that are all right. So from the beginning, actually, the way that science was organized was more in terms of perhaps shorter terms research campaign activities during the first 90s. But there was a shifting, a turning point around the mid-20s when some investments have been made in the area. So now there is new technology available, especially the new Amundsen Nobile climate change tower, which actually helps in monitoring the atmospheric features, and also the Gruppe Bade aerosol laboratory, which actually allow scientists to monitoring in a more long-term way. So if at the beginning the research was shaped more on short and campaign-based monitoring, now Italy has the opportunity to actually produce this long-term trend, and actually to really contribute to science and to share also data with other research stations and other colleagues. And I think this investment and this turning point actually reflects how Italian attention to the Arctic has improved along the years. So it has, of course, started from the basis, but now has been developing. And the station is not one of the biggest, I guess, but there is continuous engagement from the scientists, continuous presence from Italian scientists, who actually come from very different national research centers. So this also shows, I think, that there is harmonization of issues that are analyzed and studied from the Italian perspective. So I think that there is this evolution, this trajectory of Italian Arctic science in the Arctic. In terms of collaboration, of course, the long-lasting collaboration have been developed with European scientists, especially with British, French, German colleagues. I can mention some projects. One of the projects is, well, of course, all this work has been coordinating under the NISMAC, which is the Ny-Ålesund Science Managers Committee. And one of the key project is the REMOS project, which actually is related to the responses of microbes in upper soils horizon to environmental manipulations. And this is quite important. Then we have the iNorth research campaign. Again, it's not, of course, developing the station Dirigible Italia, but it is a research campaign that brings scientists in the Arctic Ocean, above Svalbard and around and above Svalbard. This year signed the 9th research campaign. So this actually shows that there was a vision when this project was launched in 2017. And again, being on board, perhaps you can really understand me when I speak about how important it is, to witness how research is done, what kind of research is done, and how data are shared. So this is quite relevant. Speaking with people like involved in the process, the research campaign, I learned that all the data that are collected during the research campaign, at least the bathymetric data, so the ones that actually help to mapping the seabed, are included in this GEPCO platform. GEPCO is the General Bathymetric Chart of the Ocean. So these data that are gathered through the use of this multi-beam, which is an instrument placed under the ship, and that maps the seabed, actually helped, of course, in improving navigation and safety during the navigation, having like more specific and more detailed data. About China and other states, like collaboration with other states, I can mention that there is the GMOS, which is like the Global Mercury Observation System, where Italian scientists, of course, collaborate with Japanese scientists, with Chinese scientists. But I do not know any other specific collaboration. Perhaps I'm missing something. And I actually see this kind of collaboration on a double level, being pragmatic and strategic, because we know how difficult it is actually to run research activities in harsh environments in the Arctic and in the Antarctic. So a big part of it, if not most of it, is to be like pragmatic, so actually help each other in terms of logistics, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of sharing vessels, research vessels. So I think that Italy is there and is ready to contribute and to collaborate with the scientific community which runs scientific research, but also strategic, because actually conduct relevant scientific research helps Italy to create legitimacy and credibility within the Arctic and within the Arctic government. So there is this double level that I think that the Italian research community is quite clear. And the way I see this, again, with also the Arctic strategy, I would see the scientific research deepen in the next future. I'm not completely sure how it will be deepened, whether there will be more room to collaborate with China or Asian states or European states. But the way, again, I think that Italy also has to take into account what is the geopolitical situation now. So I would see perhaps the development of scientific research more within pan-European networks rather than collaboration perhaps with China. Which will be perhaps there will be the need to discuss this more, I think.
So let's bring the European Union into this conversation. I know the EU's Arctic policy has been evolved. The latest one, it's 2021. I think the bill or its previous 3 version. So could you tell us from Italy's perspective, how closely that Italy's Arctic policy align with the general goal or dimension or direction of the EU's Arctic policy?
Well, that's also a very good question, because it's actually hard to see Italy without the European Union, I think, and also the European Union without Italy, because here we also need to consider like the governance issue. We know that the EU doesn't have like a fully status as an Arctic, as Italy in the Arctic Council. So I think that in this way, Italy can actually act as a kind of bridge builder actor in this context. So by be aligned with some European bodies, which are of course monitoring of climate change, environmental protection, protection of the biodiversity, and sustainable development, and of course international cooperation, the respect of the legal framework and international rights, international law. I think that Italy could be bearer of the European values in the Arctic, but also helps and as a country which is very active in the European Union. And I think this actually gives Italy a very special role within the Arctic in terms of scientific research and also within the Arctic governance systems. Speaking of Dirigible Italia, the research station, which again is the main hub of Italian scientific research conducted in the Arctic, it's worth to mention that the research station is well integrated into some EU wider project. With I can mention a couple of them, which I'm quite sure that everyone that will listen to us will be very familiar with, such as Interact, which is like some this Arctic network of more than 70 terrestrial field bases, plus the research station which are in Russia, which have been built actually to improve the capacity for research and monitoring of Arctic issues, and SciUS, which is a more large research infrastructure for integrated Arctic Earth observing system. So Dirigible Italia is part of both these projects, which again are mainly led by and financed by EU money. So again, I think that Italy is quite could be a bearer of EU values within a governance framework where it can actually be act as a leader of these values and actually help the European Union to be there, especially in the Arctic Council.
I learned a lot about how Italy bring the EU to this Arctic governance conversation. Let's move to the industrial dimension. I think Italy's company is involved in the energy project in the Arctic. I think Italy also have many expertise in the subsea tech engineering. And you also mentioned that before 2022, Italy has a close relationship with Russia. And I assume they will be talking about the energy dimension. Do you think this ongoing Ukraine crisis have an impact on Italy's economy, particularly given its interest in the energy project?
That's quite key for Italy, I think, because again, I think that Italy needs to understand how to navigate this radical change that the Ukraine war has posed to the Arctic. So speaking about some technological assets that Italy has, of course, we do not have the capacity to deploy, large infrastructure projects such as the Russians one or the Chinese ones, but definitely Italy can contribute to the technological and infrastructure development in very niche dimensions. So some companies that are already active are Fincantieri, which is a shipbuilding company, and is the shipbuilding company that is in charge of the construction of this new research vessel, again called Nave Quirinale, which will be delivered hopefully in a couple of years, and is a leading shipbuilding company in Italy. And we have also oil and exploitation companies that are active in the exploitation dimension, such as Eni, which is a leading again, company in the oil. So yeah, as you said, there was of course this very tight relation between Italy and Russia. To face actually the challenges that the sanction that has been imposed to Russia, Italy of course have to rethink and rebuild all the new energy imports, especially from speaking of gas, Russian gas that we were used to import. So in terms of that, Italy has been strengthening their relation especially with Norway. And in the last 2 years, imports from Norway has been increasing consistently, especially with the work made by the ENI in the Barents Sea, especially through the Norwegian subsidiary of ENI, which is called Var Energy. My Norwegian friends will forgive me for my pronunciation. And which operates a very important offshore project, and especially the Goliath floating platform. And there is also a new project which is called Johannes Castberg field, where actually ENI is a partner. This was launched in 2025, so in March 2025. So this is very, very recent. And lately, also the Ministry for Enterprises in Italy have signed a bilateral agreement with the Norwegian counterparts for developing critical raw material, some field for critical raw material, so exploitation of critical raw material. Nothing concrete is there yet, but perhaps it's not so unlikely to see Italy, to develop more and more cooperation in terms of energy production with Norway, again, because we have ENI, which is quite active with this platform already. And also there is Saipem. Saipem is a leading company in the deep sea and sea cables technology. That especially because of the sanctions that have been imposed to Russia, Saipem has actually withdrew from the project, the LNG2 project that Russia is still working on in Yamal Peninsula. So as we know, the Yamal LNG1 is one of the most productive energy sites of liquefied natural gas in Yamal Peninsula in Russia. And a few years ago, it was launched some sort of twin project. This is the LNG2, and Saipem, this Italian company, was involved at the beginning, but because of the sanction that was imposed to Russia, it withdrew from the project. So this to say, actually, that Italian companies are very interested and are very keen to invest in the Arctic, but first of all, they need to be very aware what is the political situation now, and to relocate, their activities, because of course now there is not so much space for collaboration with Russia. So they are kind of redirecting like collaboration with Norway, which offers perhaps the most profitable situation at the moment. But of course, all of this development has to take into account the environmental concern, the societal concerns, and also they need to perhaps place themselves within some partnerships, because of course these are companies that cannot work in isolation, because only a few of them are able to work in harsh environments. So I think there are many levels and many challenges that these companies are facing actually too, in terms of developing planning activities to exploit it, to expand their activities. So relocation from the partnership that they used to have with Russia, with other partners, again, Norway perhaps is the best option so far, and also deal with environmental concerns, societal concerns, and also the impacts, of course, that on indigenous people is quite relevant, something that they need to take into account, and all the policy framework, of course, that the list to it. So I see the development of Italian industrial dimension, like in a very this kind of niche but valuable sectors, but with many concerns that are related to that, I guess.
My last question, I want to bring into discussion about the non-Arctic states and Arctic state. I know that your own research focus a lot on China's engagement in the Arctic and China's science diplomacy, and you also study in Finland. So I'm wondering, given your experience on your research and your expertise and your studying experience in Finland as a key important country in the Arctic Council, how China's narrative about its role in the Arctic be received in the Arctic region? Not only China, if you also share with us if you have any idea how, for instance, Japan, India, and South Korea, how their vision being interpreted by countries in the high north.
Interesting questions, because well, China is let's start from how we perceive China, because I think that is quite relevant in terms of, I mean, to have like this discussion. So China has been like on top of many discussion because of for all the investments that was planning and all the presence that was actually keen to deploy in the Arctic on many levels. But the academic debate now actually agree. I think this is fair to say that also that now many academics agree that there is a little mismatch between what was the rhetoric about massive presence of China in the Arctic and what is actually the reality on the ground. So this is quite important to say that we as European, perhaps we were expecting, the narrative was about having like this Chinese massive presence in the Arctic, but the reality on the ground is quite different. So with a few investments have been realized, with few projects have been realized. So what is and where it actually China is very active is science. So speaking about the narrative, I think that is important to improve the understanding from our side about what China is doing in the Arctic, because science, I think, is the dimension where China is more active. I mean, speaking just about this year, in 2025, China has deployed 4 research vessels in the Arctic Ocean, and it realized the first ever manned deep sea dives under the ice cap. So this also shows how China has been investing in that, allowing like to realize this kind of ever research activities. So in terms of this, I think that we should actually consider give more room for cooperation and to actually enhance international cooperation in at least when we speak about science, again, because it's hard to carry these kind of activities, and there are already existing frameworks where science will inform the policy making world, such as let me think about the Central Arctic Ocean Fisheries Agreement, which is a very relevant and very useful agreement, I think, where we have like China, we have Russia, and we have the US ideally sitting at the same table and providing science in terms of, in order to know better and more deep and like the environment in looking forward the activities that can be done in the area. So yeah, in terms of but your question was narratives from.
Yeah, you answered the question how China is viewed by the region. If you want to share any other, for instance, how India and Japan is perceived by the Arctic country, that would be great.
I can perhaps think about from Italian perspective, because I've lately been engaging so much with Italian scientists and Italian also policymakers. There is so much attention about the activities that Asian countries are doing in the Arctic, because of course Italy share like this observer status with these countries. So on a policy level, they are quite at the same level. And I think there is still so much interest and trying to learn what they do on a scientific level, because I see, for example, no room for a scientific exchange with Japanese. And I cannot really say about India, but I think that there is still a very little debate about it. So perhaps the polar dialogue, I think that would be useful to use like this platform to understand more from each other. And I'm very happy that this is happening this year in Italy, because it would be like the opportunity to deepen contacts and learn more from each other, because I think that this is necessary, especially in this periods of time.
Well, thank you very much, Marco, for joining me today on the conversation on how we understand Italy's Arctic policy. And there's a lot of dimension to understand, particularly mention a lot about the size, which is a shared objective and priority for many of the non-Arctic states who has an interest in Arctic. Thank you very much. And we'll hope to bring in different voices from other countries in our ICAS Arctic series in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.